there is another event connected with on-beam composition, whether vocal, written, or a dictation to the tape. And this is the event which we have called induction. There is another term employed by the Tibetans for an event of this kind. It is called placing face to face. It is in fact an arousal of a state of consciousness in the one who reads or hears that is a foretaste of the mystic awakening, not a complete achievement of that state, but rather simply a foretaste, not yet earned and mastered by the sadhaka, but in the nature of a kind of bestowal. This event does not occur in connection with off-beam composition, but only in association with on-beam composition, and is therefore related to the transcendental component. Now, there is a good deal to be said about this state of consciousness, and we shall attempt to bring this material to the foreground here. First of all, it involves a state of consciousness which is identified as a state of trance. In our experience, it has always been a state which should be called light trance. But to introduce this subject, I shall first use certain remarks upon the subject of trance in general. Trance viewed from the outside, as in the case of one who is observing an individual who is in a state of trance, involves a psychological condition, and with our present evidence involves also a physiological condition, which can be identified by certain instruments which man has produced in recent years, such as the encephalograph and the cardiograph. There is thus a certain subject matter here which is within the range of study by the physiologist and the psychologist. What do we mean by trance? That is not an easy question to answer. One in a state of trance has more or less departed from the ordinary state of consciousness, but his departure may not be so great that he is no longer aware of the objective world which surrounds us who live in animal bodies. I have heard there is a certain researcher in this field who has identified as many as 50 grades in the depth of trance. The lightest being that which exists when someone makes a suggestion to a group, and the group follows the suggestion without any reflection whatsoever, just as an impulsive following of the suggestion of a leader. And at the deepest stage, it is a profound condition known as catatonic trance, in which it is reported that the breath stops and the heart stops, and that the body no longer has a metabolic process within it. It has been said that a body in such a condition may persist for an indefinite length of time without any decay, and that even animals would not touch it if it were found in a forest. As to this, I can say nothing, only that it is so reported. Some of the states in which the yogis induce themselves, it is said, involves such a deep state of trance. Accompanying the state of trance, there are various states of consciousness. And from the record, it would appear that these states of consciousness reach from some of the most dark experiences imaginable, such as those which might belong to a hell world, and up to the most exalted states of a nirvanic type of consciousness. Therefore, the objective fact of a state of trance as such determines in no way the affective or consciousness value of the consciousness which accompanies the state of trance. It may be an inferior consciousness or a highly exalted state of consciousness. Our concern is not with the physiological facts connected with trance or with the objective psychological interpretation of trance, but with certain states of consciousness which are connected with light trance. And by light trance, let me repeat, we mean a state of consciousness which is not completely severed from the objective world. The awareness of the objective world persists, but the orientation of the individual is to a quality of consciousness which is other than that given by the objective world. There are forms of trance which have been an object of considerable study. In connection with hypnotism, a state of trance is produced, which may reach to considerable depths. This has been studied to a considerable extent. Also, in connection with the phenomenon of mediumship, a state of trance is involved. And finally, there are the pathological forms of trance, such as those connected with epilepsy and certain pathological cataleptic conditions. We are not here concerned with this particular part of the subject matter, but only with the forms of trance connected with yoga, or the breakthrough to transcendental states of consciousness, states which are unquestionably of the highest order known to man. What I know of the state of trance, I shall report from my own experience, and thus give the inside view. From August 7th in the afternoon, 1936, when the breakthrough occurred, until some time during the night between September 8th and September 9th of the same year, I was in a state of continuous light trance, though I was not aware that this was so until certain experiences brought me out of this state, and I was able to make the comparison between the normal state and the state of light trance. As to the value of the state, it was superlative. It was the great event of the whole life, beside which I would regard all other events, all other achievements of the life preceding that date, as being of inferior importance. And that includes the whole of the academic experience and the experience of practical affairs. They are small beside the value of this period of 33 days. I made that valuation just subsequent to the coming out of the state, and continue to persist in that valuation. Let no one have any doubt on this subject. I have been there, and I know. There are no doubt psychologists, physiologists, and medical men who would disparage this state. Never having known it, they are, in fact, no more than learned ignoramuses and fools. No one can judge the value that is possible in such a state who has not entered into it. Only when he has entered into it and participated in it can he know. For anyone else to judge it is to demonstrate that he is no more than a learned fool. There are some, indeed, who have studied the results of the mystic trance upon the character of the individuals who had them, and have come forth with friendly judgments from the outside. Certain ones that I can name are as follows: John Dewey, Bertrand Russell, James H. Luba, and two men named by James H. Luba, a Dr. Coy and a Delarose. These men have concluded that the effect of the mystic experience, which involves trance necessarily, has had effects upon the lives of the individuals who had the experience, which were highly desirable. That individuals have become more keen and sensitive morally and have lived worthy lives. However, all of these five drew one conclusion with which I cannot agree, and that is that this is not a source of knowledge. They have maintained that the knowledge brought forth from the state is no more than the knowledge taken into the state. I know that to a degree, and in certain cases, this may be so. The very fact that a mystic who was brought up in a given religious persuasion tends to confirm the point of view which was impressed upon him before he entered the state, does tend to lead to this conclusion. But while I found that true in connection with certain realizations, I also have had the realizations that produced a revolution in my philosophic orientation. I came forth from the fifth realization with a point of view and a knowledge that was totally alien to anything that I had suspected as being true before. So, it is not true that new knowledge cannot be derived from this state. On the contrary, the most valuable knowledge of all can be derived only from these states.